So, Bill, I would like to premiere the podcast this month. Do you know what this is? And if so, would you agree to this?
No. What is that?
Premiering is a thing that YouTube allows you to do, where you set a time and date for it to go live, and YouTube notifies all the people, and then you can kind of like be there waiting to see it as it first airs.
And you see it in your subscription thing before it actually starts, so you can see like premiering in 2 hours will be whatever.
I think so. I don't actually know.
I think I've seen that, but I haven't seen much of it otherwise.
Yeah, it's something like that anyways. But the big advantage is that there's a live chat while it's premiering. And I thought it'd be really cool for us, you or me, or both of us, to be present while the podcast is premiering, and we could like chat to people as they listen.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll give that a shot this month, and if it works out well, we might continue it going forward. And if not, we'll just scratch it completely.
As long as you're not uploading it while I'm at work or something, as long as it's not like premiering while I'm at work or something, then yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, for sure. We'll work out a time. It might be a bit of a juggling act to like work out a time where we can catch the most of the viewer base, but also that it's good hours for both me and you. So we'll do a bit of logistics around it, but we'll try and make it work and see what happens. Cool. Okay, so that was just a really quick thing. I would like to do Bank of Artifexia in the pre-show this month, because we're going to be talking about N.K. Jemisin's 5th season in the post-show. And if I don't do Bank of Artifexia now, the post-show is just going to be this entirely massive thing. So are you okay with that, Bill?
Yes, I will allow it.
You will allow it. Okay, so we got 2 letters in the mail. We actually got these ages ago. I referred to them in the previous podcast, but we didn't do it. We didn't bring them up for the sake of time. And we'll start with the first letter. This comes from Robin, and Robin sends in 20 Mexican pesos. As always, the chapter art for the podcast will have the money shown. You go check it out on your podcast player or on the YouTube player. And there's a link in there for you, Bill, to go check it out. 20 Mexican pesos is $0.94 US. And on the obverse, we have a chap called Benito Suarez. And on the reverse, we have Monte Alban and the Mask of Cogio. Cogio? I don't know how to pronounce that at all. Yeah, cool bill. Very small, which is really interesting to me. But I like the design. I like the sort of monocolor thing going on. And more importantly, it's a bill from Mexico. The call was answered. I'm so happy. And so Robin writes in, Robin asks a question about a rather complex setup in their world building. So I'll blast through it and we'll see what we can say about it. So Robin says, I'm trying to make a stellar mass black hole orbited by 3 habitable distant binary systems. Unplausible, I know, but too cool to resist. But I can't find information on what I need, so if you have any ideas on where to look, please do tell. I need to know things like inner and outer orbital boundaries, forbidden zones, how big the black hole should be, upper limit on how much mass is in the system, etc. Lots of things like that. So my input on that is that because, as you, Robin, point out, this system is unplausible, this falls into what we talked about last month, where if you get too far away from science, there's like no science to draw on. So there's very little I can do to help you out here, other than point you in the direction of a thing called a Klemperer rosette. That's probably pronounced wrong. Links in the show notes. And it's this theoretical system, like a gravitational system that allows for like 6 bodies to orbit a black hole. It doesn't really work in reality, like it's massively unstable, but it's a thing that has enough kind of like science behind it that it'd be plausible. Now, that's not, you won't get your 6 distant binary pairs that way, but that might be a way of making a system like this somewhat more believable. Outside of that, I can't really be of much help, unfortunately. Bill, do you have anything?
The only thing I can think of is a literary reference, that there's a sort of similar setup in Ringworld by Larry Niven. I'm a little hazy on the details, but I think, and I think it's actually called a Kepler rosette. And I think it's done with 5 stars, but it's artificially created, so that's probably not that useful or relevant. But it's a system of 5 stars, equidistant from each other, that have systems, I think.
Yeah, you can have a 5-star system. That's a variation on the rosette. It's in the Wikipedia link if you go check it out. So yeah, that's definitely a thing. Yeah.
Sorry, I think it's 5 worlds around a star, and the whole system moves. But they are, as I said, it's artificially created and artificially maintained. So,
but you could totally take that and replace the central star with a black hole and make the stars make what Niven has as planets, make them stars. That would totally work. But the big problem for me with this setup would be though, like, you know, you can kind of sort of hand wave this setup. In terms of stars orbiting a black hole, but like then introducing planets around these stars, like then you're getting into the realms of like massively implausible. Like those planets are going to be subject to a whole bunch of weird gravitational interactions, and I'd imagine they'd likely get shot out of the system. And also there's the question of like how would something like this form? Like how would you get a black hole in the middle and then the 6 perfectly orientated stars in like perfect decreasing mass order, all orbiting this sort of thing?
Did Robin say 6? I thought they said 3.
3 habitable distant binary systems, so 6 stars.
Oh, sorry, yeah, 6 stars. My bad. Yeah, 3 systems. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, you know, it feels very much like it must be a constructed thing to me, like with Niven. And then if you're in the realms of constructing it anyways, you know, you can use technology to solve a lot of the problems there. So yeah, I'm sorry we can't be of more help to you, but this is one of those things that's just, it's so far out of the realms of any sort of published literature that I don't really have much to give you, unfortunately, Robin. But thank you for sending in the Mexican pesos.
I have a question about scale, though. How long would it take for something like that to become unstable? Could it be stable enough that it would like last? It would be stable long enough for stuff to be set in it, or would an instability like instantly upset the apple cart?
I mean, I would say that the problem is that it may never get to stability. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Because like the black hole has to be a remnant of a star. So like you'd have to have this perfect Rosetta orientation of stars with this star in the middle, and it blows up and it doesn't disrupt any of the stars around it massively, so they stay in that orientation, and then everything just holds for a bit. Like getting to the stage is, I don't think can happen. And I think that's why the Kepler rosette thing is a theoretical thing. Like it's a solution to n-body problems, but I don't think it's a thing that we see in nature, as far as I know. But I'm willing to be corrected on that because I'm not fully sure. Yeah, you'd have to hand wave it, I think.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. But yes, Robin, thank you for the Mexican pesos. That is so awesome. I was fearing that the call for Mexican pesos wouldn't be answered, and I'm so happy to have North America like almost be done. In fact, North America is kind of done. Like, you know, Mexico being Central America, but there's a good chunk of green there in the North America. I really like it. Thank you so much. So the next letter came from, let me just grab it. Came from a Brian Alden, who goes by Merherder on various YouTube handles if you want to go check him out. Brian sends in, like, Bill, Brian sent all of the notes. Like, there are so many notes here. So, Brian, I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to not talk about some of them because some of them we've already received to the Bank of Artifexia. I'll drop them real fast. The ones we've already received are Chinese yuan, Korean won, Japanese yen, and Hong Kong dollars. We've already received them, so I won't talk about them. Just for the sake of brevity. The new notes, though, Brian sends in 1,000 lira. And for anyone who doesn't know, lira was the old currency of Italy prior to Italy adopting the euro. And interesting to learn, I did not know this, although it seems strikingly obvious now, on the obverse of the lira is Maria Montessori, who is the person who came up with the Montessori education system. Had no idea that this person was Italian, which is stupid of me, because Montessori seems shockingly Italian.
It's a rather Italian name, all right, yeah.
Very
but I mean,
Italian.
Could be Scottish. There's a lot of Italian surnames in Scotland. So
there is. What is with that? Like, there's a heap of, like, Italian, Scottish rugby players as well. And you're kind of like, you know, you have, like, I don't know, McGinn or something. And then playing alongside, like, Baratelli. And you're like, what happened here?
I don't know. I'm not sure if there's a specific, like, thing for it. Or it's just one of those weird quirks. I assume it's just, for whatever reason, there was a load of immigration for labour at one time.
Yeah. Something similar to, like, you know, Polish and Lithuanian people probably coming to Ireland there with in the Celtic Tiger.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, something like that. Brian also sends in a 20 Indian rupee and a 500 Indian rupee note. Again, all of this is in the show notes. Go check it out. What's the word I'm looking? The conversion here is the 20 Indian rupee is 0.27 US dollars, and the 500 Indian rupee is 6.38 US dollars. And on the obverse, we have Mahatma Gandhi, which was funny because I was thinking about the Egyptian notes from the last time, and when we talked about how, like, you'd expect them to have the Pyramid of Giza on it, because, like, come on, that's what Egypt is.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, we're not going for the obvious. And I love that, in, like, contrast to that, the Indian rupee's all like Mahatma Gandhi everywhere. I think he's on literally all of the notes, which I think is, like, which is really cool and stuff, but, like, in stark contrast to the Egyptian money. And then we have the final one here. This is an interesting one. We have Brian sends in 2 Malaysian ringgit. Apologies for the pronunciation. Apparently, so this is issued between 96 and 2012. Conversion rate is 0.49 US dollars. Apparently, this is really rare. And I tried to do a bit of Googling, and I don't know, like, why. I can't ascertain why it's rare, other than, like, it is old, but I don't know why it would be rarer than, say, the lira. So that is really cool and really nice, but I just want to put out, like, a PSA. Please don't send me rare things, because I feel really bad. Like, you should be holding on to these rare things for yourself. Like, I appreciate it, but, like, really, really don't do this. Like, you know, current tender and, like, the smallest denomination. Please don't be spending a whole lot of money on me. It's wonderful, but it makes me feel really bad.
Listeners, trust me, I know him in real life. He doesn't deserve it.
Nice. Excellent. And so on the obverse we have a chap called Tuanku Abdul Rahman, and then on the reverse we have the Kuala Lumpur Tower and the MESAT satellite, which I didn't realize that, like, Malaysia has a satellite system. Like, that's cool. Malaysia has a space program. Who would have thunk?
It's a communication satellite for like satellite TV and stuff. It looks like, and telecoms.
Do most countries have their own satellites? Like, Ireland doesn't have a satellite, does it?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I don't think it's.
But I guess we're part of the EU. Oh no! Hold on.
No.
Let me think here. No, it doesn't.
Climax.
There's one planned for 2021 for this year. There's a launch planned for this year apparently.
Well, like,
for AirSat 1.
Wow, that's mad. Yeah. That's crazy. Or maybe they are more common than I thought. Because I always think of, like, you know, in terms of space, there's like but there's a gajillion satellites up there, so they can't all come from, like, you know, NASA, and I think Australia has a space agency, and then ESA. They can't just come from whatever, like, the handful of space agencies. So that would make sense.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta say, one funny thing about Brian's letter here before I get to the questions is that Brian clearly typed this on a computer, and I find it really hilarious that he writes that he had online sources to a thing, and in brackets he has the word source with a hyperlink, and I'm like, I found myself, like, tapping and being like, oh, it doesn't work because it's paper. It was really funny. So Brian writes, my question for Artifexia is in regards to the habitability of exomoons. Feel free to give a I don't know and follow up later, as this is a complex situation. Spoiler alert for everyone, the answer is I don't know, but I'm just going to keep going. I keep hearing sources refer to Saturn and Jupiter's moons being baked by the radiation from these giant harmful magnetospheres. But we all know that Earth's magnetosphere is necessary to protect it from solar radiation. Also, I read online, bracket source, that a moon could be habitable by the radiant heat and tidal forces of its parent giant. They refer to the safe distance as the, quote, habitable edge. So, is there a way to figure out the sweet spot around the gas giant, where the magnetosphere protects the moon from solar radiation without baking it with planetary radiation? Perhaps the, quote, habitable edge already takes this into account. So, again, the question here is, the thing here is, I don't know, similar to the first one in that this is not a thing that is often written about, because, you know, once we discover some sort of habitable exoplanet around a gas giant, then, you know, there's going to be a plethora of literature to read up on, but where we are now, there isn't really that much. And the main problem with this is that whilst I think it's really cool that you're looking into all of these things to help habitable exomoons, the idea of an exomoon, a habitable exomoon, is kind of not entirely realistic, because like gas giants will form out in the outer side of the solar system or a planetary system, because it needs to be cold. They don't form close in, and then they migrate inwards. And if they had any moons prior to migration, models have shown that like the migration tends to scatter all those moons entirely. So therefore, there's not a lot of, at least not that I've found, a lot of scientific literature that talks about habitable exomoons, because the assumption is most of them will be gone, and until we find something, the chances are we won't have much to read up on it. I've got nothing on that.
But is he not asking about? Is he not asking about it being habitable, or at least in part of it from tidal forces, heated by tidal forces from its parent, from its planet?
Oh yeah, I think that would still need the moon to need the gas giant to move inwards in the system. I don't know how realistic it is for like a moon of Jupiter, for example, to be naturally habitable at the distance it is away from Sol, even with tidal heating taken into account. Because while that can help, because it helps with like tectonics to a degree on, I think it's Europa or whatever. I don't think it's going to help with like actually making the planet like warm enough for habitability as we know it. So I think you'd still need to couple that with movement into a habitable zone closer to the star, and therein lies the problem. I think.
Okay.
For me, now I don't know, and again, as always, if people have more information from this, and we'll get on to this later, people have sent me papers, and that's class. Do send me papers, and I will follow up on this. But yeah, your sources, Brian, are more than what I know, so stick with them and keep going down the rabbit hole. So yes, thank you so much to everyone for sending in. This is so awesome. I'm so glad that there's Indian rupee and Mexican peso in particular in the Bank of Artifexia because of the call it put out. I'm really stoked about that. So the final thing on the Bank of Artifexia before we move on is I'm going to put out another call, and it's going to be just a single currency that I really like to see, and that is Danish krone, pronounced incorrectly, I'm sure. And the reason for this is that if I were to get Danish krone, we would complete like continental Scandinavia, depending on whether or not you include Iceland in that. But we would complete like Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark, and that'd be class. And also, apparently, Danish krone is the legal tender in Greenland, so Greenland would also go green here, and that would make the map look just really complete. So if anyone has Danish krone, the smallest denomination possible, no rare notes, please. Because as Bill said, I don't deserve it. Please do send it in, and then write us a letter and ask us some questions, and we'll give you a shout out. So thank you.
Class, thank you very much, guys.
Cool. All right, so let's do some follow up. So in email, we got an email from Nathan Meir, perhaps is how it's pronounced. Apologies,
Meyer.
And they write with more speculation on Bill's underground astrology idea from a podcast many moons ago. They write that they were listening to episode 34, or 304, Betamax Crinkle Dash. That was such a funny episode, Bill, just before I go on. I love that so much. That is one of the times I've laughed the hardest at this podcast when I think it was so good. So I was listening to it, and they had already speculated on underground astrology before, which was brought up in that episode, but they have a new speculation, and they'd like to hear what Bill thinks. They write, I doubt that I'm right, but I have a new theory on what type of craft it might be, underground astrology, and how it might work. Originally, I commented on the subreddit that it might be some sort of gem-based magic system. Haven't thought about it more after listening to stuff again. I also, and after having watched Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, I've come up with something different. In Full Metal Alchemist, there's a thing called, quote, the Dragon's Pulse. It is portrayed as a movement of energy through the planet and living things, and can allow those who know how to read the pulse to sense people, and also powers alkahestry, a magic scene in the show. My thoughts were that maybe the Beneath underground astrology might be similar. They might be able to tap into some form of energy or power coursing through the planet they are on to perform their magic. So, Bill, can you first recap a little bit about underground astrology for new listeners or people who have forgotten, and then give us your insights on what Nathan writes?
Okay, really quickly, I'm going to actually have to just check what it was I said at the time.
Bill's also forgotten. I love it.
No, I know what it is. I just don't remember exactly what I've said.
Bill needs to recap for Bill.
So I think what I said in this was someone else writing that the Bini had this concept of underground astrology, and I didn't really specify what that was about. But it's just a writer from another culture refers to this concept. That's pretty much all that has been said about it.
Yeah, canonically, but there was lots of speculation at the time.
There was lots of speculation at the time, yes. There was lots of speculation at the time.
And so, as Nathan's updated speculation come anywhere close to what you're thinking?
Yeah, it's pretty much bang on.
It's pretty much bang on.
There are specifics that aren't that are relevant here, but broadly speaking, it's got the gist of it.
Were you inspired by Full Metal Alchemist at all?
Not at all.
Not at all. Were you inspired by anything, or is this a purely unique invention here? Because I read this, and I know of Full Metal Alchemist, but I haven't watched the show. I read Nathan's description of it, and I was like, that's kind of like the 5th season. And I know you've read the 5th season, so I'm like,
yeah.
Were you thinking about that at all?
But I hadn't read the 5th season 2.5 years ago when I wrote the concept of.
Sorry, yeah, that's right. Sorry, I had it in my head that you had already read that book. I'm sorry, yeah. So no. It's a completely new, unique invention. That's wow. That is great on Nathan's part for having called that out. That's amazing.
So yeah, what Nathan says here is some form of energy or power coursing through the planets. So it is to do with power within specifically Cradle. It's a craft only relevant to the planet Cradle itself.
Doesn't function outside that. Oh, and because the Beni are like interplanetary travelers, so they can't do this stuff on different planets.
Yes, they have a presence on Icairn, and they have a presence on Vasath, but underground astrology cannot be performed there.
And what sort of things does underground astrology do? Like, what can you do with underground astrology in the Cradle?
It's not exactly that. It's like you can tap into it as a source of power, but it's more to do with kind of like, I guess, kind of like divination and geomancy kind of stuff. That you can use it to navigate, and you can use it for things like that.
Oh, does this underground astrology at all describe how the Beni are able to go be an interplanetary species?
I would imagine there's some kind of relevance. Yeah, I'd imagine there's a relevance.
Interesting. Cool.
Like it's not like it's less that an individual draws power and uses that personally, and it will be more like you can that the power is there and it can be kind of used kind of infrastructurally. That's not a literal way of looking at it, but it's more analogous. It's more like using the flow of a river to do something rather than having power inside you, like than eating and getting power that way or something. Or like, you know, whatever magical power for yourself. Yeah. If that makes sense?
Yeah, for sure. I am so jealous of Nathan's powers of deduction here, because like every time you write a bit of world building, like I kind of see it as my role to try and deduce what it is you're not writing, like what's in between the lines. And long-time listeners to the show will realize that, like, you know, Bill will write something, I'll ask a few questions, and then Bill goes, no. And I go, oh, is X, Y, and Z happening? And you go, no. And so Nathan's had what looks like two cracks.
You're a bit harsh on yourself there.
No, it's entirely accurate, Bill. Come on. But so Nathan's had what looks to be like two cracks at guessing what underground astrology is. And like he got it in two. And like, you know, my record is not that good. So I think I need to give up my role as co-host here and let Nathan come on the show, because he's clearly very good at this. But it's cool. Thank you for the email, Nathan.
Thank you very much, Nathan. I'm very pleased with that response.
Cool. So do we have anything else in email or Reddit there, Bill?
Yes, there was an email from Holger. Holger.
Holger.
Don't know. Should it be pronounced as the German Holger? I don't know.
Well,
but an email from Holger.
If it was German, it'd be like Holger.
Okay, I will trust you on that one. And they say, "Hi Edgar, you mentioned in the last Artifexian podcast that you didn't have enough information to make a video about single cell climates. Then they provide 2 papers on climate on exoplanets, which includes climate models for planets with long rotational periods. So the first is the atmospheric circulation and climate of terrestrial planets orbiting sun-like and M-dwarf stars over a broad range of planetary parameters. And the second is atmospheric dynamics of terrestrial exoplanets over a wide range of orbital and atmospheric parameters." So there's some extra information for you there to if you would like to return to the topic and make a video about single cell climates.
So I will throw those links in the show notes because the relevance from the last show. So I can't remember who was looking for this. Go check out those links. I will say though, I scanned those links real quick, and one of them looked very suspiciously like a thing I saw in researching the climate videos I had made. They are helpful, and I used them, or I used something at least that looked a lot like it in those videos, but they don't answer the thing about like figuring out the climates, the exact climate zones of like single cell planets, because like they'll do all the models, and you'll be able to see, like, you know, rough hot zones, rough cold zones, like things like that. But there's no papers that go then and apply like the Köppen climate models to the thing, because that would be really hard to do, because it would depend on like landmass orientation. It would depend on a whole bunch of parameters. So they can give you a very overview of kind of like, you know, like say single planet planets will tend to be like, I don't know, just for the sake of argument, extremely hot around a very wide band around the equator, say. That's the extent of the granularity you'll get with it, but you're not going to get any further than that. Now, I will say I did just skim read these 2 papers. I didn't spend the time to read the entire of the 2 papers. So there may well be something like that in there. But lots of the graphs and charts look suspiciously familiar to me. So yeah, just a clarifying point. They will be in the show notes, and go check them out for anyone who is interested, and you might be able to find something you're looking for there. So thank you, Holger, for sending in those links.
Thank you, Holger.
What else? We have anything else?
I think that is everything from the emails.
Cool.
There was something from Reddit. You were asking last episode about interesting royals, and user Jobayok suggested that the kings and queens of Madagascar are fascinating.
So
their personal favourite is Queen Ranavalona I, who could have very easily inspired Cersei Lannister, which is certainly a kind of recommendation.
I will say I'll permalink that Joe Bayok's a comment there so people can go read it. It's really cool, and it got me intrigued, so I kind of went down the Wikipedia rabbit hole a little bit. And Joe Bayok is not wrong. There is some real serious like scandal and intrigue in this royal family line. I came across this thing called the assassination plot of Ramada II. If you will, Bill, may I explain to you what I remember of it, because I think it's class.
Please do.
So Ramada II was a king of Madagascar, or at least a portion of Madagascar. I'm not going to make any definitive claims about the geopolitical situation when he came into power. He was a ruler of some description. And so he decided that he wanted to bring dueling in as a law, like as in Alexander Hamilton style dueling. And the prime minister at the time was like, that's a really crap idea. Like, I won't. I won't stand for this. And so what happened was, the I don't know how it worked, but like the prime minister blocked the law from like going through at a marketplace like the morning after this law was declared to happen, and then within the afternoon of having blocked law, the prime minister's like younger brother amassed an army and besieged I'm going to assume like the capital, with the intent of capturing and or killing the king and his supporters because of this dueling law. It seems to all been triggered by literally this dueling law. And it's not that like the king committed a genocide. It's the king was just like, y'all can shoot each other a little bit. It's fine. Don't worry about it. And so it led to like this siege. And so
little ass shooting as a treat.
Little ass shooting. What did you say?
Little ass shooting. It's a meme from about 18 months ago. Let's move on.
Oh, okay. God, I really am getting old. I'm getting so old. So then the sieging army captures some of like the people who were instrumental in developing this dueling law, and I think threatens to murder them unless the king comes out and hands everyone over. And the king says no. The boyos murder everyone. And then they storm the palace, I'm going to say, wherever the king was. And here's the cool, like, intrigue part. They get into the palace and they kill the king by taking a native garment and wrapping it around his head to suffocate him, because apparently there's something wrong with when you go to kill a king, you can't spill the king or queen's blood. So they like had to suffocate him. And then what happened was
Robespierre intensifies.
Yeah, I know, right? and then so the prime minister comes out and declares that the king, after seeing everyone die, was so overcome with grief that he committed suicide. And then the prime minister marries himself to the king's wife. So the bloke who killed the queen's husband goes, "I'm marrying you now to consolidate power, and we're going to do this. Like, we're going to do this properly. Like, you're not going to be passing laws without telling the people in parliament, etc." And then the further intrigue part is, apparently the rumor is that they took the body of the king away off to be placed somewhere or whatever. And apparently he wasn't dead. He was only like unconscious. They hadn't fully suffocated him. So there's this whole thing about how the king may still have been out there living as a normal person in the north or whatever. And this was a sufficient enough threat to the establishment that they conducted a whole bunch more killings to just like quell this, like the whatever, what are you going to call it? Like the great dueling incident of like whatever 1863 it was. And all this crack happened in the space of a week.
That's awesome.
Isn't it awesome? And like, I think
that's a great story.
If you replace the word dueling with like, say, magic, as in king legalize a certain type of magic, non-magicians, are really like, they're like, this is not good. And then just have the events play out the exact same way. It's literally a dark fantasy plot.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So anyway, I'll leave links to this because the Wikipedia article will go in more detail than I'm going in here. But yeah, I would encourage anyone to look into this royal family line. It is class. It is really cool. And I discovered this after like 5 minutes down the Wikipedia rabbit hole. Like, you don't need to dig deep. Like, there's just scandal galore. It is glorious. Go check it out.
Nice one.
So I think you have world building for us. What do you got this month?
I do indeed have world building. I have written a letter once again from Cairn and concerning the Tamar Company.
Ooh, back to this. Oh, we're going to need so much recap because it's been, oh my god, it's been what, like half a year since we've done this?
Possibly, yeah, probably something close to that.
We're going to do a lot of recap here, folks. Okay, anyhow, crack into it there, pal.
Dear Silvata, the recent destabilization of events in this province, disruptive as they are to the commercial pursuits of our company, have afforded us a rare opportunity. I am sure you have followed your usual practice of addressing the contents of the hold first and your correspondence last. Assuming your habits have not changed, and that the crew have restrained their worse impulses for violence and mischief, then let me confirm that yes, that is a live Urselk specimen. The Vladini, their twin lusts for tribal blood and sheer incompetence not slaked by the massacre last season, seem to be increasing their aggression day upon day. Their losses, and indeed our own consequent losses, have yet granted us some specific gains. Hoitani bands have been notably thinned by Valdini pacification, and those that remain stay close to their camps and avoid engagement with foreigners. Thus were we able to mount an expedition deep into the province's interior, the natives being unable to prove our breach of the established norms or to enforce their treaty-bound claims. Following the intelligence of a scout who has spent 3 full seasons in the highlands far west of the depot, a troop of marines tracked a pack of Urselk to their den. The pack numbered 9 in total, 4 adults and 5 cubs. The den was located in a cave, allowing our troops the tactical advantage. In a very neat manoeuvre, overseen by myself, several canisters of somniferous vapours were deployed, rendering the beasts sluggish before they could react to our presence. The charge from the mouth of the cave, undertaken by 3 of the adults, was nonetheless terrifying. Even in a half stupor, they are every bit equal to their fearsome descriptions in Hoitani lore. The front rank of the marines fended off the beasts with bear spears, modified for even greater length and strength, while those behind systematically bombarded the Urselk with missiles. Destruction of the adults was achieved with minimal loss to the Marine Company. The unexpected return of the 4th adult upon our right flank resulted in the death of 3 young soldiers, before the beast was sufficiently wounded and driven away, no doubt to die from its injuries. After allowing the gases to dissipate from within the cave, we entered and came across the cubs. 2 of these appear to have died from the gas, 1 was still tranquilized beyond resistance. The remaining 2 attempted to attack the party. The larger of the pair was subdued successfully, while the lesser was killed in the attempt. The subdued and tranquilized specimens were both bound fast and removed to cages, and thence returned to the vessel. 1 cub died en route from its injuries. The crew of the vessel carrying this cargo to you has been given the strictest orders to refrain from baiting the remaining cub or from feeding it outside my strictly assigned diet of native fish, game and fruit. It is my wish that the creature should reach you in the happiest possible health. I lost no time in dissecting the available specimens, 1 adult and 1 cub. I have included detailed drawings of this process. You will note some peculiar irregularities in the digestive system, and the engorged temporal arteries are no doubt to feed the large and highly developed antlers. The adult was 2 full lengths in height when standing upright. The meat of the beast is curiously sweet, yet musty. Servit and Sodend took part in a meal of local fashion, including Urselk meat and local forage. I do not expect this fare to become the fashion in Mirsphere next season. In addition to the live specimen, I have sent you an adult and a cub preserved in alcohol, along with the skin of the remaining adult and cub. The 5th cub was given to the marines of our expedition, to be divided among themselves for trophies and fetishes. For my own part, The intact skin and skeleton of my adult specimen is being returned to the family estate in Mearsphere for preservation. It will make a fine addition to the creatures in the entrance hall. The cub is being stuffed by one of the tradesmen in the depot, and will remain here in my quarters. You will no doubt find the young creature I sent you to have a soft and gentle aspect that belies the fierceness of its adult nature, and I wish to keep this youth as my own companion in my offices for as long as I remain in Hoitan. The pursuits of commerce are ephemeral, but the pursuits of scholarly knowledge persevere. I hope this letter and the specimen find you in good health. Yours in friendship, Egari C. Yar, Scholar Attaché to the Hoitan First Depot, Tamar Company.
Cool. That was a change of pace. That was cool.
It was a change of pace?
Yeah, I don't think we've had anything surrounding like wildlife before from you.
A little bit. We've had a little bit.
Yeah, but not the center of. I mean, we had. Wasn't there? There were some incidents where a bunch of animals attacked someone, wasn't it?
Yes. There was a description of it was, what did I call it? Increasing danger of northern settlements about Artifexias attacking a settlement.
Oh, Artifexia. Oh, okay. Because my first question was going to be, these Orzelk, are these the creatures from before? But that would imply they are not.
No, so the Artifexias are kind of like giant birds.
Oh, yes.
Giant predatory, like ground birds, like a cassowary or something. But the Urselk have been mentioned before.
Yeah, they're bear deers, aren't they?
Yes, they're kind of like deers with antlers. Bears with antlers. Most deer have antlers. Bears with antlers.
They're like deers with antlers. I love it.
The mashup of a deer and a moose. A bear with antlers.
And is there any reason, I don't know if I asked this at the time, any reason why you went with this form?
Because I thought it would be cool.
You just thought it'd be cool. I mean, look, it is cool. How big are you?
And like I was saying before, like the kind of genesis of the setting is in the planetary romance idea, like the low gravity, and full of monsters. And I've given examples of the style before, but I realised I haven't actually done that much about actual monsters in it. It's the kind of ended up being that the monster is capitalism. So I decided to make some actual beast monsters. The first one I did was the Artifex, and I mentioned these ones before, the Urselk. But I wrote a little bit more about them for this week.
And just for me and potentially anyone who wants to send in artwork, subtle hint. Are we talking, when you say they're like a bear with antlers, are we talking, is that quite literally like a bear with antlers?
Not exactly literally, but like pretty close.
Pretty close. And are we talking like what sort of coloration here? Are we talking like a black bear, brown bear, white bear?
Kind of greys and browns. And the antlers are more like American elk, like they're multiply branched rather than the kind of European moose with the kind of plate-like antlers.
Hold on a minute. American elk.
Yeah, so elk means different things in different places. But if you just look up elk, you'd usually get American elk, which have like multiply pointy, like kind of tree branches antlers, whereas mooses have kind of sort of flatter surfaces that end in points.
Oh, yes. And with this antler arrangement, are we talking like, Irish elk size? Like, is this like a giant thing here, or are they relatively small compared to the body mass?
In absolute terms, probably kind of like the Irish elk, the megaloceros. But like these are huge creatures, so it's kind of proportional.
And you mentioned that, I think in the prose you said that when they stand up they're like 2 lengths high. What is that?
So length is like a unit used by the Abesk. It's roughly the height of a tall person.
Oh, that is quite. And is that them standing up on hind legs or just them on all fours?
No, on hind legs. On hind legs.
Oh, it's quite tall. It's very tall, actually. Yeah. I mean, like, you know, what is the average person? Like well, I'm 173. So Jesus, yeah, holy God.
In our gravity.
Yeah, that's really big.
So Abeski people are much taller than we are.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like, yeah, there's definite bear vibes. Even if you didn't mention the bear crack, like, you know, eating native fish, game, and fruit. I believe bears do that. They eat a lot of fish and fruit.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's pretty cool. Anyhow, for my underlying stuff, my first thing was like a live Urselk specimen. I was going to ask about that, but we did that. Next question is, what are the Valdini?
So, yeah, the Valdini are another company, rivals to the Tamar company. I think I've mentioned 3 so far. The Tamar, who pretty much everything I've written has been about. I haven't written anything from the perspectives of the others. So that's one. And the other 2 are the Valdine company and the Eltian company.
Okay, so the Valdini are messing with the Hoitani, and that produced an opportunity for the Tamar company to come in here and do some exploration and animal butchery. Yes,
so the context of what I've written in Hoitan so far, the first thing I wrote was about a Tamar company scout renouncing his career as a scout after a massacre of the Hoitan by another company. And he was like just disgusted with how the Abesk as a culture are behaving in Hoitan, so he's left. So that's been kind of a brewing conflict in the region.
I enjoy, you have a line here that says, it is my wish that the creature should reach you in the happiest possible health. I don't know how deliberate that was, but I like the idea of someone who has like butchered this creature's family, shoved it in a cage, probably not dealt with it very nicely, and transported it across the country, and then refers to the situation as being potentially in the happiest possible health.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
I you know, if you can see a lot of contradictory attitudes towards animals in history, like contradictory to modern eyes in history, and that's just kind of an attempt of doing that. Like the animal is there to be taken and to be discovered by this colonial sort of enterprise. And you know, this guy or this writer, she's delighted that she's the first person to capture an Urselk outside of Hoitan, or has taken the first Urselk from Hoitan. It's never been done before, and has killed and dissected and eaten all these other ones. But like, it says, you know, cares for the welfare of this one that she's sending off.
It is cool though that you do present it in quite graphic terms, because like, you know, like when any what biologist or something, what do you call them, a biologist, especially back in the old days, when they went to like study
natural
animals. Natural scientist, when they went to study
or
animals.
natural philosopher.
When they went to study animals and stuff, like, you kind of forget that there may have been a lot of killing done to get those pretty pictures of anatomy or whatever that they sketch. And you forget that it might involve a band of people cornering a bunch of scared animals in a cave, gassing them, and then like slaughtering them. All in the pursuit, if we take this person to be like really genuine, like all in pursuit of like honest knowledge. It's still a pretty gruesome thing, and that kind of highlights it really well. So I think it's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Oh, I like it. Have you got anything to say about it?
Let me think. No, I think we've kind of gotten the gist of it. It's a big bear type thing with antlers. This is the first time that one has been removed from Hoitan. I'm not sure I made that quite explicit in the letter. I may edit it before uploading it. And also another kind of contradiction is this thing about, you know, the cub is cute and I want to keep the stuffed cub in my office. I kind of had a bit of fun writing that.
Well, why is that a contradiction?
like, oh, isn't it cute? Oh, isn't this thing that I murdered cute?
Oh, I see. Yeah. But I find anyone who, I'm sorry if there are people listening who do this. If so, just tell me why I'm wrong and enlighten me. But as I currently stand, I don't understand people who put stuffed animals in their house. It just seems so morbid to me. Like even if you like you went out and shot the animal yourself and then it's kind of like a trophy as opposed to just like I bought a taxidermy thing. Even then, it's just kind of like it just seems like you turn your house into like a morgue. Like it's really weird, you know. I wouldn't feel comfortable in a place where there's loads of like stuffed dead bodies around. Do you know?
Yeah, I don't think it would bother me.
Really, I think it's just really strange. No. It's like in the speaking of The Crown again. There's this one episode where they go up shooting or whatever, and they're all stoked to introduce another massive deer head into the dining room, and I'm like, that is the last thing I would like to do. Like introduce like a stuffed corpse into the room where one eats.
I mean, I would have maybe complicated moral feelings about it, but aesthetically, I kind of dig it.
Yeah, I guess it goes against my minimalist sort of thing. Like, you know, I'd be all like, it does not need to be there, so let's just maintain this pristine white wall. So that's, yeah, it's probably just me. Aesthetically, I just don't get it at all. Like,
what else? The other names that we've mentioned, we've heard from Agadi before.
Yeah, I remember. I have it underlined. I remember because I think at the time I remember saying that it was really close to Edgar, and I bonded with this person over that.
Yeah, she's got less of a vegetarian streak than you do.
Yes, significantly so.
But yeah, so she wrote the On Scouting, I think was the. Oh no, that was someone else. Hold on. Who I've also mentioned here. The Unmanly Savage. Let me think, was that her? I'm trying to keep track of everyone. Yes. So she wrote an essay before about the practices of the Hoitan. And the other two names that she had the meal with, Sorend and Survit, have also been mentioned before.
I remember Sorend.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Sorend is the commercial coordinator. Sorend Techletsky is the commercial coordinator of the depot in Hoitan, and Servit to Ovnien is the commander of the depot. Mm-hmm. So they're like the other big guys here, and the Gadi is like she's kind of the scientist they keep around.
Have you got any further plans to do more wildlife stuff?
I haven't had any other cool ideas that I thought have been cool enough to pursue yet. But I could do.
Let me think. A wolf with duck's feet.
Thanks for that.
I'm assuming that's a no-goer then. Moving on. But yeah, particularly if people do, because I know people have created artwork before based on stuff we've said, and particularly animals before, because I remember I made those Avatar Last Airbender type animals.
The No Ape.
Yeah, the No Ape. Yeah, which has been
I love that guy.
Cemented in the coat of arms. Yeah, particularly if people are into this, like depicting animals, and if people do it for this time around, I'd love to see more pictures of that. Yeah, that'd be really fun. But anyhow, congratulations, man. Well done. It is really nice to be back to like a classic Artifexian episode where we have a bit of world building and it feels like life has become somewhat normal again. So I'm happy out.
Thank you. You know, I had fun writing it. I had a lot of fun writing it.
I suppose we should move on to my stuff. We'll do some conlang.
Let's do it.
This is going to be super duper quick because I've already released like the follow-up video. So a lot of my thoughts are kind of already out there in the ether. I suppose I should begin by asking Bill, have you seen the video and do you have any thoughts?
Not only have I seen the video, I have seen the follow-up video.
Oh, so do you have any thoughts?
So I might have to check the video to get this exactly right, but I think it was slightly unclear to me. You know, in each example you had like some sounds highlighted red and some sounds highlighted blue. Yes. Like it was alveolar and affricates. Mm-hmm. Within that, can like an alveolar root change an affricate suffix and an affricate root change an alveolar suffix. It's not just it only mutates in one direction. Like if you had sas, that would change ach to like the ach prefix or whatever to as. Yep. But if you had chach, that would change the as prefix to ach.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. That was just like I was fairly sure in that, and I wanted to get to check the way you had presented it again to make sure. Okay. Then I think I get it all.
Cool. Yeah. It goes both ways. Because if it didn't go both ways, something would be disharmonic, and that wouldn't work under a harmony system. So yeah, it goes both ways.
Gotcha.
The thing I want to bring up, and I know I've brought it up in the follow-up video, but I just want to put it in many places because the overwhelming amount of feedback was concerning this thing, and that is the question of like, what is harmony and how does it differ from assimilation? Because loads of people were like, oh, that's really cool. I have a conlang that does X, Y, and Z. I have a harmony system. When they didn't, they just had assimilation. So just to be on the record again for this, harmony systems are a product of assimilation, which is like a sound change, where one sound influences another sound. But not all assimilation is harmony. And the way I think about it is that if lots and lots and lots of assimilation happens, it can kind of like result in a harmony system. So like lots and lots of small things happen and it results in this overarching big thing we call harmony. But not all assimilation is harmony. So like lots of the assimilation we have in English with like consonant clusters and things like that is not a harmony system. That is just like assimilation within clusters.
Can you give me an example of that? Because that was actually one thing I wasn't sure about, assimilation within consonant clusters.
Yeah, so like in the follow-up video, if you have like the in prefix in English, like in, depending on what that is tacked onto, that will change sound. So like it's not impossible, it's impossible, because the P in possible is bilabial, and therefore the N in the prefix changes to be bilabial. It goes from in to im when tacked on to possible.
When is in used as a negation?
Like intolerable.
Intolerable. Yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
And then like incompatible if you have a dialect that makes the nasal go velar. That's not in all dialects of English. So
yeah, of course, yeah, I get you.
Yeah, so that lots of people, like, based on what they heard in the video, and I should have been more clear about it, were like, oh my god, like there's so much harmony going on all over the place, and like that's not a harmony system, that's just local assimilation. And I think another key thing that I should have brought up in the follow-up video, but I didn't, another way I kind of ask myself, is this harmony or is this not, is if the speakers begin to think about things as being underspecified. So like, for example, in Turkish with its vowel harmony system, speakers will think of the suffixes or any additional affixes, they will think of them as being like underspecified. Like if they had a suffix like lar, for example, they will think of that vowel as being it could be one of these couple of things depending on what happens. If speakers think about things like that, then you're definitely looking at a harmony system. Whereas like in contrast with English, we don't think about that in prefix as having multiple different forms when attached to different words, because we don't think harmony wise, because we don't have a harmony system.
So like the vowel in your Turkish example, the vowel is kind of like it's an X, and you solve X depending on what the stem is or what the root of the rest of it is.
Exactly, yeah, an underspecified vowel. Exactly. And if speakers think about it like that, then you definitely have like a harmony thing going on. And if speakers aren't thinking about things like thinking about it like that, then you're just looking at like local assimilations. And the thing that makes it so awkward is that assimilation is like by far the most common sound change that occurs in language. So like if you don't quite know what's the difference between assimilation and harmony, you kind of will then tend to see harmony everywhere when that's just not the case. Cool. And that is literally all I have to say about the video.
I liked that the Duolingo owl commented.
Did the Duolingo owl comment?
Well, someone with the Duolingo owl as their avatar and with the account name Duo commented on the not the follow-up video, the first one, I think. I watched this guy's videos like I know what he's talking about, which I was extremely amused by.
I remember that. I remember seeing that. Yeah, that's great.
I assume it isn't an official account, but major thumbs up to whoever that is. That brightened up my breakfast the day I watched it.
Well, okay, I'm going to slightly introduce politics here to just unbrighten up the breakfast, but it's related to
Lovely.
Duolingo Owl. I was watching, I think there was some trend where people, like political commentary channels, were ranking US presidents, like doing a tier list of US presidents. And it was in my recommendation, so I clicked on one of them. And what I thought was so funny and I loved was that people were creating accounts under the names of the presidents who were being ranked and like having discussions about their ranking with other like fake presidents, and I was like, well played, internet, this is glorious.
Go to hell, Zachary Thompson, I'm way better than you.
Exactly. Zachary Thompson is there like arguing with like Buchanan, and it's just glorious. I love it. The internet could be a great place. But anyway, that is that's that. In the classic Artifexian style, the main topic, the main thrust of the show is always super short, and we spend all of our time talking about follow-up. So we're on course for a very standard Artifexian episode here. So, the long-awaited book review, N.K. Jemisin, the 5th season from the Broken Earth trilogy. It's finally here after many, many, many months. I'm going to defer to Bill for the start of this to tell me what you thought of it, Bill. But first, spoilers ahead. And this more than any other book I think I've ever read, if you're in any way interested in reading this book, and you're the type of person who doesn't really care too much about spoilers, I would strongly, strongly, strongly urge you to just stop now and read the book. It really, really needs to be read before you hear almost anything about it. So please stop here, go get the book, read it, and then continue on from here, because there will be spoilers and it will ruin the book for you. So Bill, what did you think?
This book is great. It is absolutely deadly. I enjoyed it very, very much. Okay, so my thoughts. This book is the best book I have ever read. Okay.
Like straight up. Like, so a bit of context here. I'm not much of a reader. I don't really enjoy reading that much. And I much prefer to consume my fantasy and sci-fi in a visual medium, like, whatever, be it comic books or TV series or films. Much more visually oriented person. So as such, whenever I go to read a book, even if I'm enjoying the book, I rarely ever read more than like a chapter or two per day, and I just feel like I just want to put down the book. I don't get that urge to like binge read in a way. This is the only book ever that has caused that to happen, and it was like a really weird sort of like, I've never experienced this before. It's like I've lost my sort of like reading virginity in a way. I'm just kind of like, this is what reading is like. Like, I have never experienced a book that has made me not want to put it down and has been so utterly enthralling and captivating. And for that reason alone, it is the greatest book I have ever read, hands down.
All right.
It is sublime.
Cool.
And whoever sent us in this recommendation, thank you. You listen, consider yourself like an honorary knight of the realm of Artifexia. I don't know, the Order of the Urzelk or whatever. Because you, my friend, need great. I just need to thank you so much for bringing this book to my attention. Just so good. But anyway, before we get into all of this, do you want to give a brief overview of what goes on in this book?
So this book is set it's in a setting where there is one large settled supercontinent on the planet that irregularly undergoes long periods of climatic disruption due to geological activity. So be it destruction from earthquakes or volcanoes or whatever, that also happen on a more limited, smaller, destructive disaster scale, but every so often, as I said, at irregular periods, cause years or decades or centuries of disruption and upheaval to the environment. And it's the story of three different characters over various periods of their life related to the system of magic in the setting, which is called orogeny. Orogeny, I don't know. It's definitely a just sound, but this is also an actual word in English that has a geological usage. I'm just not sure what the vowels are. Which is essentially the drawing power from and directing the flow of power from within the earth and from around your surroundings. It's connected to metal and to heat and things, stone and heat. That would be my very long brief pitch.
Are we going to give away the thing with the characters? I'm assuming we must.
Well, I mean, now, yes, we should. So yeah, it turns out that the three characters are the same person across her life, at different stages of her life. And this as a child, as a young adult, and then as a middle-aged one.
And I think this is what makes the book so riveting, because like that revelation, like at least for me, I didn't see that coming whatsoever. And when it suddenly occurred to me what was going on, I was like, it's one of those things where it's almost like a Fight Club moment where you're like, oh crap, I like have to reevaluate everything I know to be the case in this setting. It's such a cool tactic that I have not seen in the books I have read ever. And it's great because it gives you think you're in a Game of Thrones like setting where there's like a multitude of characters all on their own independent stories. It's very Game of Thronesy, I thought, at the start, and then when it hits you that these aren't independent characters, that they're all the same person, it's like you get it's this weird crossover between like the expansive Game of Thrones style thing and almost like a much more singular sort of like Lord of the Rings Frodo type story. It's just perfectly bridges these worlds, and it's done with such skill. It's so good. Like I genuinely gasped when Demaya took the name Cyanide, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. And it's just it's the best thing ever. And that's why I told them, like, you gotta go read this book, because if you have that spoiled for you, so much of the fun of the book is ruined.
That one I figured out.
Did you figure it out? I didn't see it coming whatsoever. Because
there's in an earlier chapter narrated by Cyanide. So that's the young adult, or the young woman. She says something, or there's something like Cyan cannot help but think of a fusty smelling blanket. And that's something that Demaya refers to in her very first point of view chapter. A blanket that her grandmother made from scraps of cloth. So I was like, oh, so obviously that's her. But that it was also the third character, I didn't connect. You probably should have once it was revealed that two were connected, but the third one, that one's on me.
But in any ways, I think it's done subtly enough that like it's missable. I missed it. And I think that's just really great. I can't get over that switch. And the thing is, I had a bunch of notes related to the book to complain about, and they're all rendered irrelevant with that twist. Because like I was really? The Demaya storyline is terrible. Because it's like this bog standard sort of like kid from the from rural area goes to big city to get big education, almost like Harry Potter-esque. Kid doesn't know they're a part of this like magical society, goes to school to learn about magical society. I was like, this is dull. But then that's an invalid criticism, because like there's no Demaya storyline. It is the one storyline, and you're like, damn it, Jemison.
I actually really like that in its own right, because it was such a horrifying take on it. Like it was taking this kind of, as you say, like the Harry Potter go off to a magical school thing, but the magical school is actually slavery, and you know, it's the children are put at risk of predators and all kinds of abuse, and if they don't perform, they get sent off to be like utterly dehumanized in the nodes. And I thought it was an interesting way of approaching that, like taking that standard idea and making it horrific.
And it's worth noting that this entire book is horrific. Like,
yeah, it's bleak. It's very, very bleak.
Yeah, everything in it is just, it's so dark. Like, it is, but it doesn't come across as being.
But it's not edgy. It's bleak and it's horrible, but it's not kind of prurient about it. It's not like reveling in how edgy and violent and stuff it is.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, it's not done in a sort of was it Ramsay Bolton in Game of Thrones? Yeah, it's not that. It's like all of the bleakness and the darkness like seems to be perfect consequences of like the system that's set up. Like you can kind of go like, oh, I could totally see how this horrific thing would evolve all this, and it never felt like Jesus Jameson is just trying to lump this horrific thing in here to be cool and trendy and stuff.
There's a kind of a banality of evil to it.
Oh, stop. Oh, yeah, 100%. Where it's just like this low-key background. Everything is just like completely F-word. And like it just, that's an implicit assumption. Like it's just, it's so dark. And like obviously with N.K. Jemisin being a woman of color, there's an awful lot of like commentary about race in this, and a lot of this society is an allegory for at least I think, for the experiences of people of color in the world. And there's a lot of stuff that I kind of assumed was I mean, even if it wasn't intended as such, that you could interpret as references to slave experiences in the Americas. Yeah. So it's just work, man. This book, I'm sorry, I just love it so much. It works on so many levels. Like it's a really good fantasy world with like extremely good world building, but like beyond that, it's also like a really good like novel that has commentary about the real world, and it just, everything is just, it's so good. I can't get over how good this is. No one around me has read this book, and I'm urging people to read it. I just be like, I need someone to talk to about this. It's just, it's so good. I do have a criticism. I will level a criticism at Jemisin, if that's okay.
Yeah, work away.
So I read half of this book in written form, and then way back at the start when we announced we'd talk about this, and then I listened to the book the entire way through recently in audiobook form, and I gotta say that experiences are very different based on how you're consuming it, because I did not take well to Jemisin's writing style in written form. Like it just came across as like real catty in a way, or real like kind of sarcastic, that I think didn't fit the like horrificness of the setting. Like she's very fond of, at least in the first half of the book, she loves using brackets and parentheses and inserting little like snide remarks about things, and it just didn't jive with me. It seemed a bit too maybe a bit too modern. Like the writing style was a bit too kind of like contemporary for the setting I thought was being proposed. But then when you listen to the book and you don't see the parentheses and things like that, and you get a non-sarcastic tone being delivered to you, it reads in an entirely different way. So that was a really interesting experience for me. I've never had that before either, where the written form and the audio form are like just worlds apart.
I had kind of a couple of things to address there. I had kind of a similar-ish experience trying to read it, because my ability to read is shot in the past like 18 months. I can barely read anymore, and it's only gotten worse over the last year of like all of the stress in the world in general. So I actually got this like quite soon after it was originally proposed, after we originally said we'd read it, and I got it in paperback. And I made a couple of attempts and I enjoyed it, but I couldn't focus on it whatsoever. And then 2 days ago, I was like, oh god, I have to read this for Sunday. So I got it, and I was trying to read the paperback, and I couldn't I was doing okay. I got about to where I'd gotten already, maybe a little bit further, and I was like, this isn't working at all. But I had recently read a couple books on Kindle, and those are like the two books that I've read in the last 8 months, kind of. So I went and I got this on Kindle as well, and then I got like 30% into it, and then I like went to sleep for the night, and then I just like chewed through it the next day. So I mean, I finished it about 18 hours ago.
Wow, you're fresh.
Yeah. So yeah, like that was kind of an interesting parallel there, that we had struggles to get through it. But as I said, I don't think that's a consequence of the book in my case at all. It's just I'm finding it hard to read in general, and I think Kindle makes it a bit easier. About the authorial voice and the parentheses and stuff. I think that makes sense because as it revealed at the end, who it's being narrated by in those sections. That there are sides, because it's not a neutral omniscient narrator. It is one of the characters narrating it.
Yeah, no, I get that, and I'm not saying it's out of place. It just didn't jive with me.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah.
There was a couple of places where there was one or two things that threw me a little. Like there was one or two places where there was italics used for emphasis and stuff that felt a little kind of like breathlessly enthusiastic or something, and it took me out of the writing a little bit. Mm-hmm. But again, that wasn't very often. If I was to have criticisms of it, I guess that would be one of them. This is doing a kind of a common thing that you see in superhero stories, for example, of using people with non-natural powers as allegories for real world events and real world issues.
Yeah.
The issue that I sometimes have with that is it's kind of hard to engage with, because real life marginalized people just want to go to the shops and like get married and things and not be hassled, and don't actually have world-ending powers, which is this is maybe a criticism of this book specifically, but it's a thing that I just kind of struggle with a little bit in these kinds of stories. It's like, what the bad guys are doing would be terrible in a real-world context, but when it's superpowers, it's a little bit more sympathetic.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's valid. That's valid.
That's kind of a thing I've always thought about, like the Marvel Civil War or about X-Men or things. Like, I get it. Totally works as an allegory if you're being very allegorical about it. But if you're kind of literal minded about it, and I'm quite literal minded often when it comes to media, it's like, well, I mean, if you're able to blow people up, I kind of see what the bad guys mean.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's kind of an intent on the author as well. Like, the author clearly wants you. I mean, no modern author wants you to just think of the bad guys as being entirely bad. Like, the author wants you to be able to like somewhat sympathize with all sides to make it a complex read. So
possibly.
Yeah.
The other thing is that this has really big numbers in its world building. Like, the continent is it's pole to pole or close enough. It stretches from Arctic to Antarctic regions, and the history is like tens of thousands of years deep. Which is usually a thing that I like. Scale that big is usually a thing I don't like in world building. I think this work does have some justifications for it, like in the stone lore and how that operates, and that like there are specific things about how the societies are set up to last for long periods. I'm not fully decided on it. I didn't mind it as much as I would mind in other stories, and it didn't take away from the story for me. And I think it may be kind of justified by some of the stuff in it, but it's a maybe criticism there.
Yeah, on the world building, like just purely world building, like no
Yeah.
no story, no narrative at all. I had a similar thing. Like the scale was just vast, and like for example, if we assume this planet is relatively Earth-like, so in like the range of Earth-like radiuses, such a continent is absolutely ginormous. And you're gonna end up with the classic problem of, if you have civilizations, if you have cities in the middle of this continent, it's just not going to be a good place to live at all. It's going to be barren and hot and awful and things like that. But at every point where I thought that in the book, much like you said with all the stone lore stuff, there was always some sort of internal justification for it that made it make sense. Like the placement of Humanus, for example, it's located in like the heart of this continent, which immediately my brain was like, you're not going to get a massive city there.
It's not quite in the heart.
What?
It's not quite in the heart. It's a fair bit inland, but it's not like in the center.
Oh, no, I will say, was there a map in this book?
Yes.
Okay, so I haven't seen the map. I'm just going on what's being said because the audiobook is the... Yeah, so I could stand to be wrong here. I'm just basing on what I heard. The text implies Humanus is in the heart of this continent. And ordinarily I'd be like, no, that's bad. Don't do that. That's nonsensical. But then when you think of the notion of like they just need desperately to get away from rifting zones, then you kind of think like, yeah, they could spend the effort to move like a capital of sorts. Or to have a capital of sorts be in a place where I ordinarily wouldn't encourage people to place a capital. So everything weird about the world building at all stages worked because of the justifications. The justifications for it were always valid in my mind. Yeah. I have some other criticisms and a good point, a slightly not safe for work good point. So potential cut there, but just giving you prior warning. The Nasun or Esun, I can't remember what her name is. The older lady.
Essen, yeah.
Essen. The narrative style is in second person, so it's like you went to the shop, you bought groceries. I get it. I get why that's the case. I get that, or at least I interpret it as that is the present moment. So placing it in the second person gives you a sense of presence and differentiated from all the past events. I get it. But it's so distracting because she'd say something like, you climbed the hill and foraged for berries, say. And then at every point I was like, would I have done that? Did I do that? And because it's being told at me, and I'm like, but I'm not this person. And there was always that cognitive dissonance going on. But again, not a big deal because overall there's a good reason for that, and it's not just I wanted to be quirky by writing in second person.
Yeah, that didn't really kind of even register that much for me.
Oh man, it was the worst. You went to the shop and bought meat, but I'm a vegetarian, book. This makes no sense.
So what else? What other points do I have here? As regards kind of the horrific elements of it, they were so normalized. Eugenics was totally ingrained into the concepts, the societal concepts, not only for the breeding programs for the origins, but for people in general, just that it is good to have Sanzed ancestry, and that's no one really kind of commented or kind of questioned that. It was just it's good to have that standard, which is kind of a horrifying realization as I read it. It was like, oh, everyone just kind of accepts that. What else? The casual dehumanization of the commonless. So if you're not a registered citizen of a community, you're kind of subhuman and outside the law. And again, that's just kind of fine and accepted by people, totally normal.
Yeah.
Which I thought was good. As well as all the stuff about institutional abuse and sort of structural oppression, and the tortured children used as the safety, the earthquake safety program.
Here, can I stop you there? That was I'm not easily disturbed with things, but that was really disturbing. That was a little bit hard to both read and listen to, because it's for everyone. You have these things called nodes, and they're basically, there's an origin. These magic wielders who can control the earth are placed in these nodes, and they kind of like keep the earth still. They quell like shakes and things like that. And
they quell earthquakes by instinct, but by just like naturally.
Yeah, no, but at the start you're just told that that's the case, and at least I thought it's like, oh, some professor of originy is sitting in a node somewhere doing his thing. But what actually is the case is that in these nodes are like children who have been forcibly put there because they can't be controlled. They're genetically, they just can't control the powers, and so they're put in these nodes and like, you know, against their will, bound and strapped to like a horrific torture device and sedated. And then I think at one point Alabaster and Cyanide have a conversation about how like they're just like periodically trigger content warning coming up here, that they're periodically like people pay to just come in and rape them, and then that's fine or whatever. And I think it was one of the things is like the people, the ask for them to be taken out of sedation during the act, and that causes some of the problems where there's little slips or whatever, because the node maintainer would like react to this horrific thing and there'd be shakes or whatever. And it's just like I found that like genuinely like very difficult to both read and listen to. Apologies, that is graphic, but this book is graphic, so
I think my interpretation of that wasn't that was a normal accepted part, but that like it wasn't an intended part of the system, but it was something that happened because of neglect, and it wasn't cared about enough to prevent it happening, which is just a different kind of horrific.
Yeah, God, I'd nearly argue it's more horrific. Like it's a sort of like we don't care about victims thing, you know?
Yeah.
It's just that was proper difficult, like really difficult to read.
And it's kind of interesting to some of that stuff, some of that institutional stuff from an Irish point of view. I think that a lot of Irish readers would kind of have strong reactions to some of the stuff in this, like the first of all, the children being taken away to unaccountable institutions, and then abuse of various kinds within those institutions, and then stuff like this as a further worse extension of that abuse. Yeah. I don't know, that was just something that occurred to me from you know, contemporary Irish issues.
100%. You could definitely read that stuff into it.
Some less horrific, purely world building points.
Cool.
I liked that it was, in many ways, it appeared to be a pre-modern society. It doesn't fit neatly into a historical period.
Yes.
Which I really liked. It was very kind of differing levels of technology, which is something that I really appreciate in constructed worlds, like, because there is no particular reason for technology to follow a single linear path. It hasn't even done in Earth history, and I think stuff can be very Eurocentric, and think that that's the normal progression. So that doesn't happen at all. It's difficult to kind of draw a clean historical analogue. My initial reading of it, like in the opening chapters, was kind of a, you know, generically some kind of pre-modern society, but that clearly had complex legal and social formalities. Like one of the things that Essen mentions in her house, in her kind of Runisac, the stuff you take with you in a crisis, was certificates of citizenship and certificates of taxation, to show that they're up to date on their taxes and they're both registered members of the community. Which I thought that was kind of neat when I was thinking, okay, this is a pre-modern society, but they've gone to the author has gone to the effort of showing that it's a complex and advanced in its legalities and citizenship and stuff, which again is probably quite historically accurate, but it's not something that you would see pointed out that much or thought about that much in a lot of fantasy. But yeah, I mean, the technology is all over the place. Her husband, Essen's husband, is a napper. Like he he naps stone for tools, and glass is used as a for knives, and cannons are like a totally new invention, and that exists alongside hydroelectricity and hormone treatments for medical transition of gender. And like it's just a completely differing levels going together, which I thought was class.
Yeah, same. Yeah, definitely. I remember because at one point the electricity thing was pointed out, and it caused me to kind of think like, what is going on here? Like, are we in medieval times? I had these same reactions. Well, I think really great.
And that makes sense within the thing that you will have centralized hubs of places that maintain technological knowledge and institutional knowledge through crises and through the seasons, as they're called, which is the longer periods of crisis, and that's going to be lost further away. And you need redundancy. So you need, like, if there's going to be a crisis, you can't rely on there being electricity. So you need to be able to maintain the skills of napping flint to make tools, etc. Yeah. The populations are also huge.
Oh, I don't remember anything about this. Go on.
Large scale thing. So I think it says so. In the city that gets destroyed, Alia or Aila.
Alia. How do they pronounce the book? I can't remember. Yeah, Alia. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You actually know how things are pronounced. Okay. So how do you pronounce the magic users?
Origins.
Origins. So yeah, and it says Alia on the map. In Alia, I think it said that 100,000 people died in Alia.
I mean, yeah, that's. I mean, it's large because is Humanas the largest city in the thing?
I don't know if they give. They might at the very beginning give a population thing for Humanas. But like, you know, for not like it's not said that 100,000 is like a super big city. But like that's a pretty big city in modern times. Like not necessarily on a global scale, but you know, in any given country or any given region, that's a fairly major city. And in the appendices, there's one of the appendixes is a list of the different seasons of that are in recorded history. And in one of them, a city of 14 million people was destroyed and was the center of the thing.
Can I jump in here? Because this is a thing that I really liked and it's related.
Yeah.
I really, really, really enjoy when a civilization is not the pinnacle of technological advancement. When like the prior civilization was much more technologically advanced. And I think that would play into the population things. Like if you have the ability to sustain 14 million people, you're going to likely be a little bit more advanced than, you know, the next civilization who can't sustain that many people. I really enjoy that. And like the obelisks in the sky hinted at that really well. It's kind of like, oh, what came before was like this like super advanced race, and like they just didn't make a season, and now we've been pegged back down a few knots. I think that's great because I think it's very easy for modern people to just think that the trend of advancement is always upwards. And I think people forget that throughout history, Dan Carlin put it really well in one of his podcasts. He was like, throughout history, it was not unreasonable to think that you might be the pinnacle of all civilization. Whereas in modern times, you don't think that because you're just like, but computers will just get so much better next year. Like the future is always bigger and better. Whereas before, that wasn't the case. And there's examples of kind of like extreme advancement and then just plummeting off a cliff, and then extreme advancements, etc. I think that's really fun and presents a really complex setting. And it reminded me a little bit of Final Fantasy X, just to bring in my favorite video game of all time, where the without giving away too much of it, the setting is a future setting, but the tech level is extremely low because the technological advancement of the previous civilizations caused like a world-ending event. So you get this cool sort of thing where like we're in the far future here, but we're not better off than the past, and that's really good and complex, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Another thing I kind of thought of just last night was examples of kind of mass collapse in history. You know about the Bronze Age collapse?
No.
So I can't quite get the dates right here. I think it's like, okay, I'm just gonna get the right figures. One moment. So essentially, there was a large kind of, not civilization, but group of civilization, meta-civilization, in the Eastern Mediterranean in the Bronze Age. So that would have been ancient Egypt. I think it was kind of pre-Homeric Greek, the Hittites. Then Babylon would have been the Babylonians and Akkadians and stuff. I'm not specific on my various Mesopotamian groups. Would have been at the kind of the further edge of that, but they would have still have been kind of involved. And then over the course of maybe a century, most of those civilizations suddenly collapsed.
Oh yeah, that's where we get that's before the 300 Persian Empire.
Oh yeah, it would be. So I'm trying to get the figures here. It's like 1200 BCE. So that would have been a good while before. I think Thermopylae was like 300 BC or 400 BC. So because, a good few centuries before.
I'm trying to recall my hardcore history. There was when Dan Carlin covered the Greco are they called the Greco-Persian Wars? Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. When he covered them, he spent ages going through the preamble to them, and I distinctly remember him being all like, there was all these complex civilizations, and then it just all like vanished in hardly any time, and then the civilization that emerged out of that was the precursor to that. Were they the Elamites? Were the Elamites the one that
sounds familiar from reading about this. Yeah, I think so.
I think the Elamites came from absolutely nowhere and then just completely usurped the entire area, and everything else before that just fell off a cliff. I think that's it. Please correct me in the subreddit here, folks. I'm not confident in what I say.
Yeah, they're somewhere involved around there, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so it's kind of, that idea is interesting, of like collapse and what endures through collapse. The other thing that I thought of is the European colonization of the Americas. There's a fair bit of evidence apparently that there were like large cities, or at least many large towns along the banks of the Mississippi in the late 1600s, I think. And when that was like one French guy traveled up the Mississippi, and he had recordings. He wrote about this. And then when more Europeans got there, maybe 2 generations later, they were gone.
I didn't know that.
There was very, very little left of them. And I mean, I think there is kind of a school of thought that in many ways European expansion into North America, they were essentially going into a post-apocalyptic environment because there had been these large and complex situations that had just been wiped out mainly by disease. To some extent disruption, like direct disruption. But I mean, the Europeans took quite a while to even cross the Appalachians, and once they did, there was very little left on the other side. These large, complex societies had been wiped out.
Yeah. So again, like, this is a thing that occurs throughout history, and it's a kind of fallacy of the modern mind to think that tomorrow is always going to be better, bigger, and more advanced than today, which has not been the norm throughout history, and it's cool that this book draws on that.
That concept is sometimes called Whig history. That history is a constant, inevitable progression through better ideas and through to better things.
Which is, again, not always the case.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fallacious. Because,
I mean, once Google really figures out this AI crack, we're going to be on a downward slump. So... No, I joke.
But we'll have loads of paperclips, though.
We will have lots and lots of paperclips. Google branded paperclips. It'll be great. I have I have only one more point in my notes here, and this is the not safe for work point here. So, listeners, if the show cuts right now, I said something terrible and Bill stopped me, but I'm going to proceed anyways. So sex scenes, right? Sex scenes or the depiction of sexual activity in books. Mm-hmm. Very often, it is very awkward and like hyper masculine. I think back to reading George R. R. Martin sex scenes, and they're just kind of like, you can really tell like it's a bloke who was once a teenage boy, writing about sex, and it's usually not very like complex, and it involves a lot of like writing the word like dick or cock a lot, or throbbing member and all that sort of jazz. Whereas there's a lot of sex in this book, particularly towards the end, and it is just presented it's narrated in a way that I find rather unique, and it's free of this sort of like masculine writing of sex. And it was like very graphic. The sex was like really graphic, but also at the same time like extremely tender, and it was just really well done. And it's a thing that I think because N.K. Jemisin being a woman, it really brings a different perspective to it, because again, a lot of fancy authors are just blokes who were teenage boys who were fond of like writing about throbbing members. So I really enjoyed that. I think the writing of the sex scenes in this was exquisitely done, and it's skillfully and adeptly done.
I didn't have any particular reaction to the prose itself. I mean, I've no objection to it. But I liked, you don't see a lot of bisexual polytriads in fantasy literature. So yeah, that was nice. Bit of representation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But again, it wasn't played off for like shock value. Do you know what I mean?
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah.
It was really skillfully and like really sensually like depicted, and like a real loving, like really cool thing, like, and at the same time being really graphic about it, but again devoid of this like hyper masculine way of writing about sex.
Yeah, again, like how the violence wasn't purient. This wasn't pornographic.
Exactly. And there's that meme. There's some meme about how men write about sex. I must find it again. If it's not too.
Or male authors describing women.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
is another one.
I think there's way too much of that crack, and I think George R. R. Martin is very guilty of a lot of that crack. And this was just such a really good remedy and antidote to all that nonsense. It was great. It was really great.
I think it can be explained, at least. Not that anyone has to like it, but I think it can be partially explained by him portraying a sort of an extreme patriarchy and an extremely masculine environment. So it makes sense in context, at least in his case. Sure,
but like the whole genre for a long time, possibly still, is permeated with that anyway. So like even if we can explain the context of George R. R. Martin their way, we'd have to like do that for every single other book that is written in a sort of, very masculine orientated way when it comes to sex.
I got you.
Yeah. But yeah, so in summation, for me anyways, do you have other points, or should I get with the summation part?
Let me think. Bullet points, eugenics, complex, primarily not neat population, scale. Oh, yeah, it's one really good line, which I think was very clearly about minority experience, was when they were in the school, and they were being lectured on presentation, and they would get beaten if they didn't present themselves properly. Like if their uniform was wrong, or they weren't washed well enough, they'd get the snot knocked out of them. One of the things was this is what they're told by their teachers: you are representatives of us all. When you're dirty, all origins are dirty. And it's just like, that's kind of every person from a marginalized group is taken to represent all of them. So the crimes of a single one are used to punish everyone. Which I thought that was a real kind of neat summation of that idea. And a final world building thing, they use gems as money, which I thought was kind of nice.
Oh, I totally missed that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
They use chips of stone as money. So mother of pearl, like a piece of mother of pearl, is like a higher denomination than a piece of garnet or something.
Interesting.
It's mentioned a few times.
Yeah, so in summation, like I said, this book is just, it's the best book I've ever written. Ever read. I did not read this book. This is the best book I have ever read in terms of fantasy and sci-fi. It is a tour de force of writing in this genre. If you haven't read it, go read it. It's amazing. And one more point. I promise I'll finish on this. The last line of the book is it's great because it's like
yeah, it is good.
It's weird and it makes you feel like the hell is happening here, and it really makes you want to read the next book. It's something to the effect of this character Alabaster says to Essun. Sorry, is it Essun or Nasun? I can never remember.
Essun is the woman. Nasun is her daughter, I think.
Okay, Essun.
No, Gigi's her daughter.
He says to Essun, "Have you ever heard of the moon, or ever heard of something called a moon?" And it's like, it kind of like it's alluded to throughout the book that there's something funny going on with the sky, but it's not really dwelt on. And then at the end, you're kind of like, the moon. What are you talking about, the moon? And you kind of just really want to pick up the next book and go, tell me about the moon. Come on.
Is it alluded to there's something funny with the sky?
Yeah, there's a little section of the like flavor text at the start of chapters where they're all like, they talk about how they never look up, they need to just always look down because that's where all the problems is. And the narrator says something like, if they looked up, they would see that a thing is missing or whatever.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah, I forgot that bit, I guess.
But it's extremely brief. Like, it's not really dwelt on again. And then at the end, it's like, have you heard of a moon? Have you heard of a thing called a moon? And you're like, what is going on here?
Tell me, he says, have you ever heard of something called a moon? Yeah.
It's really great. It's really, really great. This book is exquisite. Go read it. To the person who recommended this, I can't thank you enough. I had so much fun. It's mighty. Now, in terms of what book we're going to review next, I don't really have anything specific in mind. So if it's okay with you, Bill, I thought we'd open it up to the listeners again.
Sure. Yeah.
We're looking for works with really good, complex world building to pick apart. Yeah. So like not any sci-fi and fantasy book. That won't work. If you're going to submit something that you think we should look at, include a brief synopsis and why you think it's apt given what we've asked for. And then failing that, if no one writes in or suggests anything, I'm half thinking what we might do is a bit of a tradition, Bill, again, if it's okay with you. Jemison won, I can't think of the prize, but it's like the Oscars for fantasy and sci-fi, whatever the hell it's called. I was half thinking
Hugo.
Maybe we might read the winner of that on a yearly basis.
Yeah.
It might be fun. In replace of our like annual Star Wars episode, we have our annual Oscars of Fantasy episode.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So leave us your submissions. All the contact details are going to be in the show notes. Outro, Bill?
Yeah, let's do it.
Thank you so much for listening and watching, folks. Thanks so much for supporting the show. We will see you all next month for more Bill and Edgar, yeah?
Absolutely. Talk to you then.
Until next time,
Edgar
out.